Hello. On behalf of the Solidarity Board in the Palestine Committee of Norway, I want to welcome you all to this event. My name is Morten Sortodden, and I am the National Coordinator of the Solidarity Board. I will give a small presentation of the participant who will take part, and it's a leader of the Palestine Committee, Nadia Qassem, and one of the leadership in the General Union of Palestine Women, Nadia Qassem, in Rashidiyah, and also our host and friends for many years in Rashidiyah, Amira Sadek. Elisabet Sausjord, our coordinator of our projects in Lebanon, and Ingrid Bjordal, Forestvedt, former solidarity worker and activist in our movement. If you who follow this event have any questions, please use the chat field and we will try to answer. Then I want to introduce our leader, Nadia Qassem. You must unmute yourself, Lina.
Sorry, Morten, that was a very useful note. Thanks for having me here, and happy Women's Day, everyone. Happy, powerful Women's Day. I'm gonna say a few minutes about the struggle for freedom and the struggle for gender equality for Palestinian women. And I'm going to try to share with you a presentation that I have prepared talking about how the fight for, sorry, I need to just do like this, how Women's Day and solidarity and struggle for freedom is connected. So being a Palestinian woman means you have to fight the injustice of being stateless, of living under an occupation, living as a refugee, as well as bearing the costs of living in a patriarchal society. But being a Palestinian woman for me has also always meant being strong-headed. And my role models, like my grandmother, Sitti Amina, that you can see here in the photo, also shown me that Palestinian women are able to take their place, to be hardworking, not to be afraid of what they say. And it's also a society where women, of course, have a very important role. Historically, Palestinian women have taken part in the protests during the British Mandate era. They were part of mobilizing against the Zionist colonization of Palestine during the British Mandate era, and of course after the UN partition plan, and were severely affected by the Nakba, the uprooting of 2/3 of the Palestinian society who were made refugees during 1947-1948. So while being a refugee and establishing a new life, as you see in the slide here, Palestinians were living in all of historic Palestine. The partition plan was supposed to give them a Palestinian state in a bit less than 50%. But we came out with only having this left as a Palestinian state, and 2/3 of the Palestinians became refugees in the neighboring countries. Being a refugee also brings a lot of limitations regarding rights and your social and economic status. We will later hear from our colleagues in the General Union of Palestinian Women in Lebanon, who can tell us more about the living conditions in the camps in Lebanon, where they have been subject to live in the same limited area since 1948, even though the number of refugees since 1948 has increased from 60,000 to around 400,000 now. And where 40% of the families, the households, are led by a woman, and the income is from a woman because either the man is is sick, is dead, is not able to work, and women need something to give them income and a livelihood. Since 1967, more than 17,000 women have been held in Israeli jails. So being a woman living under occupation also affects you. While my Norwegian grandmother was the only woman out of 12 siblings, girls and boys, who took a higher education, my Palestinian grandmother, Amina, always cursed the fact that she had not been allowed to have an education, to go to school, and she was married off when she was 16 years old. Being a refugee, for a Palestinian, being a refugee, education has been one of the kind of salvations that we have had. You have had access to education, and Palestinians are amongst the highest educated people, or has been at least, around the world. But the possibilities to have a job and have an income are not present due to the political circumstances, lack of rights, and the occupation. So in addition to being a woman in a male-dominated society, economics and social circumstances affect women in the Middle East, as they do all over the world. And due to the ongoing now political and economic crisis in Lebanon and the war in Syria, Palestinian women there are suffering from many layers of discrimination and oppression. And we see an increase, for example, in young girls being forced to marry, being married off at a very young age, because their family are not able to afford keeping them at home, giving them an education, giving them a future, giving them the possibility to control their own lives and their own bodies. Also, we see a lack of representation of Palestinian women in different sectors, but I will now focus on the Palestinian Authority institutions, which are the only kind of formal institutions that we have as Palestinians, where it's barely 5%. And I think also my colleagues who will speak after me from the Union of Palestinian Women can say more about possibilities for participation in the camps and elsewhere. I said we also suffer from living in a patriarchal society, which means the number of women living in households where domestic violence is happening is 30%. I mean, 30% of all Palestinian women say they have been subject to domestic violence. And this is also something the women unions are fighting against. They are making shelters for families to come, possibilities for women to seek advice and to seek support in how to deal with living with a violent husband or father or brother. But just, I've said it before, how do we fight this kind of gender inequality when we are also living with severe lack of political freedom and economic and social circumstances that keep you kind of down? But we do have strong women who are fighting for the cause. And on November 2nd, last year, 2020, several Israeli soldiers raided the house of Khateeb Safin in Al-Biri, outside of Ramallah, in the West Bank of Palestine, and arrested her. Without being informed of the charges she faces, she was transferred to an Israeli prison inside Israel, which is a breach of the Geneva Convention, which prohibits the transfer of prisoners from an occupied territory. And Khateeb has been held under administrative detention since November the 12th. She was arrested in a raid in November with several well-known other Palestinian leftists, trade union leaders, activists, women, student organization leaders, as well as former political prisoners. And this includes also a member of parliament and women's rights activist, Khalida Jarrar. She's been arrested a long time ago now, for I think at least 3 years, and she has been arrested before But what we see is Palestinian activists and also, not least, Palestinian women fighting for women's rights, for freedom, are being put in jail by the Israeli army only because they are feminist or only because they are Palestinian. And then we also have the systems that surrounds the Palestinian women, youth, women and men, of course, which extensively holds Palestinian political prisoners and detainees without trial or charge, without disclosing any evidence. And as of November 2020, there were 4,500 Palestinians held in Israeli prisons. 370 out of these were in administrative detention. When I met Khateeb Safin in Ramallah a few years ago, I remember her telling us how difficult it is to mobilize young women to gather due to the restrictions on travel that we have in the Palestinian areas. And I can try to only show you here. I mean, we have segregated road systems along the West Bank. This is the West Bank of Jordan. That's the Jordan River. And there are all the time checkpoints in between the Palestinian cities and villages around here. You will also have military checkpoints that can come up anytime, and that prevents people traveling safely from one place to another. So Khateeb says, for young women and for any women to gather, if you want to travel from, say, Nablus to Ramallah, you have to cross several checkpoints on your way. Sometimes they are closed earlier than they're supposed to. Sometimes there will be a curfew without any further notice. And people, parents certainly, are afraid to let their daughters, girls, go around, do activism, meet up, join a demonstration due to the fear of them being arrested. And when we look at Khateeb now sitting in administrative detention, not for the first time, you also understand that this is a real fear that Palestinian parents have. So the regime of segregating Palestinians, the regime of limiting Palestinian freedom of movement, that affects women. It affects young girls specifically, and it leads to them not being able to travel due to their family's fear of them being put under arrest. But I think that for the Palestinians living under Israeli occupation, policies, territorial and political fragmentation, this is breaking up the Palestinian territory into several unconnected and isolated cantons. This is a way of trying to break down the Palestinian people. The fragmentation also goes between those living in exile, in the refugee camps in Lebanon or in Syria or in Jordan, those living in the West Bank versus East Jerusalem versus Gaza. So we Palestinians are split up geographically, and we also divided by being given a different set of rights and different sets of possibilities. And this fragmentation is also put in place in order to make us weaker. But we know that we can also stand together. And we know that with solidarity and steadfastness, the possibilities for Palestinian women being able to work freely, to mobilize freely, and to influence their own societies, that is present. The Union of Palestinian Women, for example, are working to increase political participations in the upcoming Palestinian elections. They are at least scheduled to be held in May. They are also working to amend laws to give women further rights in case of divorce, inheritance, and fighting gender inequality in all spheres of daily life. And I believe that with the support of women around the world, with the support of all Palestinian women dispersed wherever we are, I believe Palestinian women can actually reach the moon. So thank you for listening to me, and I'm looking forward to hear from our colleagues in the Lebanese camps. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Lina. And the Palestine Committee in Norway have cooperated in 20 years with the General Union of Women in Rashidiyya. Many Norwegians have had the opportunity to stay and learn and experience the life in a refugee camp in Lebanon. I hereby give the word to Nadia Qassem, who is in the leadership of General Union of Palestine Women. And also Amira Sadek, our dear host and co-worker in Palestine. Welcome, Nadia and Amira.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. بدك تحكي شيء؟ مساء الخير، كيفكم؟ أنا نادية قاسم من مخيم الرشيدية. خلقت بمخيم الرشيدية هيدا وما زلت أعيش فيه. طبعا مخيم الرشيدية هو الأقرب إلى فلسطين الحبيبة. مخيم الرشيدية تعرض لكثير من التدمير. أنا بالنسبة لي بدايتي تطوعت باتحاد العام للمرأة الفلسطينية، يعني تقريبا كان عمري 19 سنة لما تطوعت، ما كنت مكملة دراستي، وتطوعت معلمة، وبعدين كفيت دراستي وصرت مسؤولة العمل الاجتماعي في منطقة سور. بعدين طبعا بعد جهد وتعب والى آخره كمان صرت مشرفة رياض الأطفال في منطقة سور، وعضوة في الاتحاد العام للمرأة الفلسطينية، وأيضا أنا كمان عضوة في اللجان الشعبية، وأيضا أنا متطوعة وناشطة اجتماعية بالعنف ضد المرأة. هيدا بالنسبة للفقرة الأولى اللي حترجمها هلأ سارة.
Good evening, I'm Nadia Qassem. I live in Rashidiyya camp. It's the closest camp to Palestine. I'm married and I have two sons and two daughters. I started my active society work since 1985. I'm a member of the General Union Palestinian Women entire area and responsible for the social activities entire area. I worked before as a kindergarten teacher, then as a member in the Popular Committee of Rashidiyya camp and active member on Violence Against Women program.
طبعا مخيم الرشيدية هو الأقرب لفلسطين ولقلب فلسطين، وهو يعني نحن من هون من مخيم الرشيدية تقريبا لما بنشم الهواء بنشم ريحة فلسطين موجودة قريبة مننا. مخيم الرشيدية مخيم يعني في الماضي هو كان تعرض لكثير من الحروب وكثير مرات عديدة للتدمير. استشهد آلاف الأشخاص داخل هذا المخيم وجرح الآلاف. مخيم الرشيدية هذا المخيم مخيم المواجهة بسموه مخيم أطفال الأربيجي، لأنه هذا لما إجا الاحتلال على الرشيدية سمي بأطفال الأربيجي لأنه واجهوا الأطفال الدبابات الإسرائيلية. وهذا مخيم هو مناضل ورجع وأعاد بناء المخيم مرات عديدة وصمد في وجه كل الحروب. طبعا في تحديات كبيرة لهذا المخيم. التحدي الأول هو الشاطئ البحري لسكان مخيم الرشيدية قراب كتير للبحر، فهذا هم عرضة للمخاطر. تقريبا شي 500 عائلة هم معرضين للمخاطر البحرية البحر، وخاصة في فصل الشتاء. وتم تدمير بيتين أو 3 وأنقذوا عائلاتهم من البحر. طبعا بالنسبة كمان التحدي الثاني بهذا المخيم واللي عم بيعاني منه، طبعا مواد البناء صعب إنها تفوت على هذا المخيم. نحن اليوم بالمخيم صعب نفوت مواد بناء على المخيم، وخاصة أنتم بتعرفوا اليوم، خاصة اللي تطوعوا من بالكم بالرشيدية بيعرفوا إنه مساحة المخيم هي صغيرة وعدد سكان عم بيكتر، عم بتزايد، خاصة في على المدى البعيد. فمساحة القليلة وعدد سكان، في ناس بتتزوج وبيوت أكيد ما عادش في بيوت. فكرمال هيك إدخال المواد كتير شيء مهم بالنسبة لنا كسكان مخيم الرشيدية أكيد. طبعا في كمان تحدي بالنسبة لنا، تحدي كمان كبير اللي هو غلاء المعيشة. يعني إحنا اليوم ما في استقرار، ما في أمان، وبالإضافة الاقتصاد المنهار بالأضعاف 5 مرات عن الناس بالسابق، وهذا الغلاء سبب كمان أزمة اقتصادية اليوم كبيرة. طبعا كمان بالنسبة هوني أنا حطيت المساحة كل يوم عن يوم اللي حكينا فيها إنه عمال بيزيد عدد سكانها وبيسبب إشكاليات كبيرة.
Now we're going to talk about Rashidiyya camp. We said that it's the closest camp to Palestine. It's Rashidiyya camp have been forced a lot of military Israeli actions, and during the past years it was destroyed many times, and it caused thousands of people to be killed and injured, in addition to many difficulties and changes because of the sea, especially in winter. We face a lot of damages, and also above all of that, we are forbidden in entering building materials to the camp. And more than 72 careers we are deprived of to work inside Lebanon, and in addition to in addition to living beside coasts, in which increased about 5 times more in the past few years, and helped in destroying a lot of houses and injured many families, and forced them in leaving their houses.
Okay. ما فينا اليوم إلا نحكي عن المرأة الفلسطينية داخل المخيم الرشيدية. المرأة الرشيدية بمخيم الرشيدية هي امرأة مناضلة طموحة قوية، ولكن كمان برضو تحكمنا العادات والتقاليد داخل هذا المخيم، العادات الموروثة اجتماعيا، ونحن على مدى سنوات طويلة بنحارب هذه العادات اللي طبعا اللي ما بتخدم وصول المرأة للمستوى العالي، ما بتخدمنا إنه نكون بمستوى يليق في المرأة بالمستوى السياسي والمناصب العليا والسلطة. طبعا هذه العادات والتقاليد نحن يوميا من خلال التوعية ومن خلال المحاضرات داخل المخيم والمؤسسات الاجتماعية الموجودة، نحن دائما بنشتغل على إنه تطوير هذه الكفاءات من النساء حتى يعتمدوا على حالهم أكثر. بالإضافة طبعا إنه السنوات اللي مضيت، يعني نحن كنا نقول إحنا بعدنا على مستوى الدرجة الأولى من السلم بالثقافة، واليوم بنقول بعدنا يعني قد ما نتحدى بعدنا عم نقول ما وصلنا للمستوى السياسي الكبير. المرأة بعدها بتاخذ الدور الاجتماعي والدور الصغير، الدور المرأة والدور العمل الاجتماعي والى آخره. نحن اليوم بنناضل لنوصل لمستوى سياسي عالي جدا. وطبعا المرأة الفلسطينية اليوم بتحديات كبيرة، بتواجه صعوبات كبيرة، وخاصة بنلاحظها وين؟ بخلال توظيف الوظائف. يعني بنشوف المرأة بتشتغل بالتمريض، ما بنشوف المرأة عم تشتغل كطبيبة. ما بنشوف يعني من خلال الأجور النساء اللي بتحصل عليها. أجور النساء اليوم متدنية، يعني نفس الوظيفة الرجل بيحصل عليها ونفس الوظيفة تحصل عليها المرأة، ولكن الأجور الأجر المرأة بيكون أدنى من أجور الرجل. طبعا بهذا اليوم كمان ما فينا إلا أن نحيي المرأة الفلسطينية بفلسطين وبالرشيدية على نضالها المستمر وكفاحها المستمر في من أجل أخذ دورها بالمجتمع يعني طبعا.
Now we're going to talk about Palestinian women. First of all, happy Women's Day to everyone and to all the Palestinian and to all the women out there in the world. We're going to talk about Palestinians inside camps. They are controlled by the old tradition and habits. And in addition to male power inside the camps that we all see, this appears in labor places and in their own house. Even if she attempted to get a position at the first line, of course, she will be fought by males and face many problems and blocks. For this reason and others, we must share hand by hand to give women the rights in safe atmosphere of life and work. We always work on empowering women inside the camp to know their rights and fight for their rights. The Palestinian women fight side by side with men to get rid of colonization and occupation and finally build the free democratic state. We remember the Palestinian sacrifices against Zionism and Israeli occupation in occupied territories. The Palestinian women are equally responsible of liberation and struggle for their families and home building as much as the Palestinian men.
كما أيضا ما فينا إلا نحيي أصدقائنا في كل العالم، أصدقائنا الداعمين المخلصين لشعبنا الفلسطيني بالمخيمات وبكل مكان. ما فينا إلا نشكرهم على دعمهم الدائم لصمودنا ولوقوفهم بالتضامن المعنوي معنا، وهذا شيء مهم بالنسبة لنا كشعب فلسطيني. اليوم نحن بنشكرهم على هذا الموقف، وخاصة في ظل جائحة كورونا كوفيد-19، ونحن بنمر بأزمة صعبة كتير بداخل المخيمات بظل شح الموارد المالية والاقتصاد المنهار في لبنان وعدم تأمين مستشفيات للمرضى. ولكن ووجود الأنروا وسياسة الأنروا وتخفيض الأنروا لكثير من خدمات الأنروا اليوم شحيحة، ومنظمة التحرير تمر بأزمات والأنروا تمر بأزمات، والشعب الفلسطيني بشكل عام على أرض مضيفة اللي هي لبنان بتمر بأزمات اقتصادية وبنوك منهارة. هذا كلاته أيضا بخلينا نقول إحنا اليوم بحاجة لأصدقائنا وين ما كانوا لوجودهم جنبنا ودعم لنا. طبعا كمان نحيي نساء في كل العالم، النساء بشكل عام في أينما كانوا أينما وجدوا، ونحيي وبالأخص نساء فلسطين المناضلات الشهيدات المعتقلات في سجون الاحتلال، ونشد على أيديهم ولهم كل التحية والتقدير، وإن شاء الله أكيد الإفراج لهم السريع بتضامننا ووقوفنا جنبهم. ونخص نساء الداعمات لنا بمخيم الرشيدية، أصدقائنا في مؤسسة بالكم، نخصكم الشكر الجزيل وكل الاحترام لكم، وأنتم متضامنين معنا دائما، وهذا شعور نقدره عاليا. وشكرا لكم على استضافتكم. شكرا لكم، شكرا جزيلا.
We're going to talk about the importance of the support of our neighbor friends around the world. It's very empowering. Because of rare refunds of UNRWA and PLO to the Palestinian community, it's not enough. We tried to face and fight COVID-19 with little possibilities and limited resources, especially with the hard economic situation on the camp for the people inside the camp and outside the camp. On the occasion of International Women's Day, we give you the best regards to all the women around the world, especially the Palestinian women and especially women inside prisons and jails. And big thank you to Palcom for support and solidarity with the Palestinians everywhere, and especially Rashidiyya camp. Thank you from the bottoms of our hearts for our dear friends in the community. We are very grateful, and we thank you so much for everything you do to support us. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. I am Amira Sadiq, a good friend of many Norwegian that I miss you all. I want to greet you today in the Women's Day, National Day, and to wish you a good time. And I wish this COVID-19 will disappear soon, and then we can see you again. As you know, I have been hosting Norwegian since many years in my house, and it's a big pleasure for me to have this, to continue this. And I miss you all, and I hope soon we can meet again. My love to you all, my Norwegian friends. That's now. Thank you very much for this nice meeting.
عمل يطلع حاله هو عمل هو من عنده شيء
من عنده بس بقول له هو
بس هو مش منتبه لأنه هو بس
Sorry. I forgot to unmute myself. But again, thank you so much, Amira and Nadia. So nice to see you. And our coordinator for the project from Palestine Committee in Norway, the person who initiated it, it's Elisabet Sausjord. And Elisabet, can you tell about the intentions of the project and the achievement and other reflections you have about it, please?
Hello. Part of what you're asking me, Morten, also Ingrid, who's speaking after me, will say something about it. First of all, thank you, Amira and Nadia and Sarah, for having this voice from Rashidiyya. It's so important. Greetings to all of you on the 8th of March from Tromsø to Rashidiyya, and to all of you in the meeting. I hope we are many. In a normal 8th of March, we would be in the demonstrations and gatherings around in Norway with our banners. Support the Palestinian women's struggle for a free Palestine and boycott Israel. This year, we meet here and we could hear your voices directly from Palestine. That was a good idea. Next year, I hope we can do both, be in the gatherings and somehow hear your voice directly. This year is also the 20th anniversary for our common work, the General Union of Palestinian Women and Palcom. 20 years is a long time. 20 years ago, Ingrid Are became the first young solidarity workers to Rashidiyya. But the common history of the Palestinians in Lebanon and Palcom is a common history that started in 1976 with health teams and a long cooperation with PRCS, Hilal Ahmar. We always hoped that all this solidarity work, from the health teams to the solidarity workers, the youth, should benefit the people in the camps and at the same time benefit the work here in Norway to put the pressure on our government to support Palestine in their struggle. A little bit about the history of this part of the work with the Women Union. In the year 2000, the Palcom leader at that time, Wenche Åretun, and I went to Lebanon to have a meeting with the leader of Women Union Lebanon, Amni Jibril Suleiman, to discuss future cooperation in solidarity work. She was very positive and she sent us to the Women Union leader in Rashidiyya, Alia Zamzam. We explained the purpose of Palcom solidarity work, and she said at once, or before we even finished explanation of the purpose, she had got a clear idea about this. She knew what it was all about because she had experience from the health teams of the 70s and the 80s. And she was eager to tell me about her friends from that time, and she was eager to welcome us back in some way as solidarity organization in the camp. She had a special friend that she asked me about, Fatima. It was Liv Thommessen. She was in Lebanon during the massacres of Sabra and Tilla. I had heard about her, and later I got to know her through Alia. It's like being a part of a big family, you know, the whole work. I also have to mention this year 2000, it was in the spring or early summer, and Israel had just had to withdraw from South Lebanon. And I just remember we participated in the with the Lebanese and the Palestinians at the Israeli border, just celebrating so much because Israel had to withdraw. And we felt more optimistic about the future at that time, maybe. So I was asked from Palcom to be the project coordinator, and I've had an honor to coordinate this work ever since. Having such good, wise and caring partners in the Women Union as Nadia now and Alia in the first period have made my work so much easier all these 20 years. I have felt like, as I said, being a part of a bigger family, solving all the problems together, like a real partnership. And Amira, I just have to tell you, I've been totally dependent on your help and support, wisdom, and it's 35 years now of friendship. We met in the spring in 1986. It's been a pleasure to work together with you all. You know, I can sometimes feel uninspired, and maybe I can lose some hope sometimes. But always, when I talk to you, when I come to see you, when I work with you, I'm always inspired to continue the solidarity work in Palcom. Ingrid, who will speak after me, will talk about her experience and why and how this work is an important part of Palcom's solidarity work as total. We believe in educating young people about the life, history, and long struggle of the Palestinian people. And we believe, by experience, that developing personal life-changing relations is a good way to do it. So we hope to continue this cooperation as long as necessary, meaning until a free Palestine. And to work with these strong people, women in the Women Union in Rashidiyya, it gives hope and strength to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you for your nice words, Elisabeth. Hearing about this project also give hope and prosperity for the future for all of us, I think. And then I give the word to Ingrid Bjørdal Forestvedt, one of our solidarity workers.
Thank you. I traveled to Rashidiyeh to volunteer as a solidarity worker in the fall of 2019, together with my friend Eva. For 3 months, we worked and lived together with people who we quickly came to think of as our extended family. Before I arrived, however, I had only heard of Rashidiyeh. I knew it was one of many old Palestinian refugee camps in this tiny country, Lebanon. I knew that about 30,000 Palestinian refugees lived there, and I knew that the camp was located on the beach. That was about it. But when we arrived, we were welcomed with open arms from everyone we met. It did not take long before we were invited into the life of Rashidiyeh. This solidarity project is unique in how it allows us to take part in another society like that. It also says a lot about how welcoming the people of Rashidiyeh are, I think. In general, this project is all about solidarity. It is what it represents and what it is all about, the true solidarity in standing by Palestinian refugees. To search knowledge about their cause, to hear what they have to say, to share the fight for justice somehow. As solidarity workers, we want to do everything we can in order to make the voices of Palestinian refugees heard. In the daily life, we as solidarity workers cooperate with the General Union of Palestinian Women in Rashidiyeh, and we work at several youth centers run by the Women Union in the camp. We worked 5 days a week with a pretty diverse schedule, revolving around 2 kindergartens, a library, 2 after-school centers, and an activity center for youth with disabilities. A lot of our work involved assisting teachers with English education and homework, together with participating in other activities at the centers. Another main objective of the solidarity work is to organize this photo project called Eyes of Children. Children at the centers are handed out cameras to document their life in the camp, and later they show their photos at this big exhibition. 2019 marked the 10-year anniversary of the Eyes of Children project. Since the beginning, it has aimed to show the struggles and the beauty of everyday life in Rashidiyeh through the eyes of its children. It has sparked joy and spread knowledge about photography while highlighting the situation of Palestinian refugees among Norwegians. We hope the photos can continue in broadening the understanding of what it means to be a Palestinian refugee today. You can find the photos at the Facebook page called Eyes of Children Rashidiyeh. Our mission as solidarity workers for the Palestine Committee is to learn more about the Palestinian cause and the story of the Palestinians. To stand in solidarity with the people who have suffered such great injustice, and still does, over 70 years after the Nakba. And our mission involves spreading this knowledge when we get back home to Norway, to talk about what we have learned, what we have seen, and what we have heard. People's stories, their lack of rights, the injustice. We hope to contribute in transforming our experience and the stories and knowledge who people in Rashidiyeh share with us into action. This is a big part of the Palestine Committee's solidarity work in Rashidiyeh. However, what strikes me the most when I think back to my time in the camp is all the love and joy. Never have I felt such hospitality, such generosity, and such kindness. And the pride of being Palestinian is so apparent and visible in the society. I am so grateful for the experience I had, and I think about the people I met in Rashidiyeh every day, especially the women. My time in Rashidiyeh gave me so many new feminist role models. I cannot express how inspiring it was. The Women Union is so important because it's not only making it possible for so many women to work, but also encouraging it. As in every society, the role of women in Rashidiyeh is irreplaceable and necessary. Women are the backbone of the community, as they are in all communities. I am so grateful for having been able to work with so many groundbreaking, strong, and inspiring women that I met through our work with the Women Union and in Rashidiyya in general. Today, the fourth generation of Palestinians are growing up in Rashidiyya. They are playing in the streets and attending the kindergarten I used to work at. 30,000 people in total, with their own hopes and dreams for the future. 30,000 refugees who haven't lost their legal rights to return to their homeland, even though they haven't been to Palestine for over 70 years. Their rights are not on the table as something to be negotiated with. It is not a question. The basic human rights of Palestinian refugees has to be taken into account whenever discussing the Israeli-Palestinian conflict's future and solution. It must also remain at center of our solidarity work. That is why it's so important to talk about Rashidiyya, about the situation for Palestinian refugees, about the things that has to be done. And that is why this project is so important. In addition, we as Norwegians must pressure our government into doing more for the Palestinian cause, and pressure our politicians into standing up against the state of Israel. To anyone who might be interested in volunteering in Rashidiyya, do it. I cannot express it enough. It has been so important for me, for my view on politics and the world, on justice. It is a unique experience that I will always carry with me. But more importantly, it is important for the people in the Rashidiyya. It is important for the Palestinian cause. It is solidarity, and we will always stand by our Palestinian sisters and brothers. Happy Women's Day and Free Palestine.
Again, thank you to everyone for participating. I wish you all a happy 8th of March evening, and let's all hope that Corona soon will be dead and buried so we can visit again. And I think you all should visit Komiteen on Facebook and Instagram, and also our webpage to see more about our work. And we more meetings on the internet, meetings plan. So stay tuned. And then I say bye-bye and ma salam to everyone. Bye-bye.